It's interesting about mandatory filing compliance when it comes to CBC reporting. So back in 2014, when the OECD released the Action 13 report on what needs to be prepared for CBC reporting, so your CBC report, your master file, your local file, we've had a number of corporations talking to us over that journey about what they need to do to get ready. And many of them are wanting to do dry runs around their CBC data for the CBC report, but many have been waiting as well for guidance to be released in various countries, because many countries have been coming on board in a very piecemeal manner. So Australia was first off the rank, along with Spain and the UK, but we also have seen a number of other countries coming on board a lot later. And so depending on where you're headquartered will affect obviously when what the obligations might be and when you might want to actually file. What is apparent though is there's no longer any time to wait. So over the next 18 months, you're going to have to file all of these requirements depending on your year end, up to around about September of next year. It presents an interesting challenge for corporates over here in terms of the kind of work and preparation and planning they need to actually do. However, the ATO have provided an administrative solution to multinationals in Australia in terms of a duplicate effort of compliance in preparing their IDS and their future local file. What that administrative solution looks like is that when they're preparing their tax return and they're preparing their IDS, no longer do they need to necessarily prepare Section A of the IDS. Instead, they can lodge Part A of the local file as a separate lodgement to their tax return at the same time as the tax return, and then lodge Part B and the accompanying attachments 6 months later, 12 months after their year end. So what that really means is there's no duplicate efforts, and the effort to comply is a lot less because you're not providing the ATO two levels of different levels of information within a 6-month period. Now it's interesting, Jim, how many corporations we've seen think about preparing Part A versus doing the full local file at the end of the year, and those types of corporations as well in terms of size. What do you think you've sort of observed?
I think there's the bigger end of town are probably thinking about it more than the smaller end. I think the larger corporations have spent more time planning, doing dry runs. This is generally the case. I think there's always some exceptions to the rule. The larger corporations, of course, I think those who are early balancers as well have been a lot more concerned about it. The filing date's imminent, 15 July for those early balancers that are December year end. When it gets down to the smaller end of town, I think a lot of the smaller corporations, and this could, of course, a lot of inbound multinational corporations, of which there are many, many thousand here in Australia, a lot of them tend to be sitting back and waiting, perhaps for their external advisor who might be more involved in some of the local compliance historically, to come and advise them on the way to approach things.
Yeah, I think that's about right. I think we're getting a mixed response. I think once people realize what's involved in actually doing the local file versus their IDS, some are changing their mind. Some are actually saying, well, why don't we just do the local file Part A right now, because it saves us time from doing it later on. And one of the reasons behind that is there's only a single tax manager that's usually responsible for doing their IDS and all their other tax compliance obligations in these small inbound organizations. So it's just something that I think a lot of multinationals need to consider as their filing deadlines come about.